Another day of intense battles. There were, of course, some expected results, but very eventful round as compared to the ones that we had seen in the past, where at least three players who blundered and lost their opening games actually went on to win the match. And Viswanathan Anand, who had actually won his first game in the tournament that was against Peter Liko, and he was just a draw away from gaining 3 points from this match. But then in the fourth game, there was apparently a mouse slip, and he lost. And then it was yesterday once more for Viswanathan Anand. He went into the tie-breaking game, and again he just couldn't play fast enough. Now this is so ironical for someone who grew up with a reputation of being the lightning kid, and all these years he has won practically everything that the game has to offer in the shorter format of the game. He has won blitz titles, he has won rapid titles, he was a rapid king for almost a decade, and now we have reached a point where we are actually talking about Anand not playing fast enough. So he lost in the tie-breaking game, not because he was in an inferior position, just because he had 4 minutes on the clock playing black. He just had to draw the game in order to win the match. But that didn't happen. He just lost on time. So that was, again, another heartbreak. So Anand's search for a win continues. He did taste victory in the first game. That is when, again, it was a game full of blunders, and especially towards the end of the game, where at one point Anand looked completely lost because Peter Liko was looking at a 9-move mate, but surprisingly he misplayed the move and gave Anand a possibility of winning in the next, just checkmating his opponent in just 4 moves, and Anand didn't miss that, and Liko resigned immediately. So that was game 1, which Anand just grabbed his chance. And the second one, again, was a draw. The third ended in a draw. They were like quite solid. So that placed Anand in a position where he just needed half a point or a draw to just get those 3 points, his first 3 points from the tournament. But then when he was playing the fourth game with black pieces, there was a time where everything was equal early in the game, and then he just held his bishop, wanted to keep it on a particular square, didn't drop it there, he dropped it back to where it was a move earlier, and then suddenly he realized that that one lost move, in one sense, was bad enough, because the attack which Peter Liko had launched on the castle king of Anand and the pawns protecting the castle king, now they were in serious danger, and he didn't have enough defense, or his pieces couldn't have come in time to save the king. So he resigned immediately. So the score stood at 2-2, and then what happened in that tie-breaking game was, again, Liko played smartly. I must say, it was a long game, obviously, but he made his moves fast, and he just waited for Anand to just slip to that defeat, because Anand took his time, although he started with 1 minute less, but then he didn't have to win the game, he just had to draw the game, which Anand couldn't. So that was it. Anand, the only satisfaction, that, if you may say so, was that he tasted victory for a change. But then he still finds himself at the bottom of the points table, and that is going to be pretty tough for him, because now there are 4 rounds remaining. At best, Anand can add 12 points, and that is if he wins all his matches within the 4 rapid games without going into the tiebreaker. So that will give him a maximum of 12 points. That is asking for too much, because considering his form, or rather the lack of it, he's really struggling, and to expect him to suddenly change gears and go for 4 wins is highly improbable. This is where I think Anand is a special character, or what has made him so special is this one characteristic about him, which I'd like to share, because this reminds me of what happened in 2001. There was a tournament in Dortmund, and Anand would go there every year and do reasonably well. He used to be, second, joint. I mean, there were occasions when he and Kramnik jointly finished the tournament on the same number of points, but Kramnik took it on the tiebreaker. So Anand had a good record there. But in 2001, he finished last. He lost 3 matches. I recall he lost twice, 2 out of 2 to Vasilin Topalov. And then he lost 1 to a Russian player by the name of Alexander Morozovich. So a 6-player field, and he loses three times, which was very unusual. And then he finishes last in the tournament. So he came to India, and I happened to talk to him. So after a long chat, I just happened to bring up this defeat at Dortmund, and he just looked at me surprised, and he said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Which tournament was this?" I said, "The one and the only tournament which you played at Dortmund." And then he said, "Which sport are you talking about?" And I was like, I didn't know what to say. And then, of course, he broke into a smile and he said, "Rakesh, what do you do with a corrupt file in your system?" So I said, "Well, you just delete it." He said, "Yeah, exactly." He says, "I've deleted the corrupt files by the name of Dortmund." So, and that is Anand for you. That's exactly what he did. He just has this ability to just delete the corrupt files. Now, this is what exactly he's going to do probably here. And just to add to what I was talking about Dortmund, in 2001 he finished last. He returned in 2004 and he beat Kramnik in the final. Kramnik has won the tournament a good number of times. He beat Kramnik 2.5, 1.5 in the final to emerge as the champion. So what I'm trying to say here is Anand is Anand. He has a very special way of dealing with disasters, dealing with disappointments, and he is one of those guys who just sits down with himself, he deletes all the corrupt files, and then reboots and comes back fresh the next day. So expect some good results at least in the next 4 days. What Ivanchuk did to Magnus Carlsen was something that nobody else could do in this tournament. He beat him in the first game, troubled him again in the third, which he eventually lost, and it became 1-1. And then the fourth was drawn, and in the tiebreaker also, there was a time when Ivanchuk looked better off, then again ran out of time because the younger lord, as I had mentioned in my earlier reviews, that in this kind of a format where you have limited time without increment in the last tie-breaking game, this is where the younger lot hold a huge advantage. And Carlsen knew what he had to do. Again, instead of playing brilliantly, he played smartly. He just played on time, and Ivanchuk finally cracked and ran out of time. And before that, of course, he just allowed a big move for Magnus Carlsen, and then it was virtually lost. So, but one thing that people have to know here is, who is Ivanchuk? Why is Magnus Carlsen having so much of respect for him? Because Magnus Carlsen before the tournament said that there's one person that I want to face, and that one person is Ivanchuk. And why so? Because Ivanchuk has a terrific record against Magnus Carlsen. Not many people are aware that in the 2013 Candidates Championship, which Carlsen just about managed to win, and then he became the challenger for Anand, and then thereafter there was no looking back for him. In that particular tournament, Ivanchuk beat both Kramnik and Carlsen. And Ivanchuk again beat him in the 2016 World Championship, for that was Blitz and Rapid. He beat him in both Blitz and Rapid. And at that time, he was 47 years of age. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that Ivanchuk is a genius. He is born, he's around in this world only to play chess. His kind of, the kind of brilliancies that he has shown to the world in all these years is hard to imagine. I don't think I have seen players. Of course, we have seen Kasparov coming up with something absolutely brilliant. Karpov, not so much, but then he was pretty solid. But when it comes to originality, and bringing out these great new ideas, you can still expect Ivanchuk to give you the thrills. And that's exactly what he's been doing all these years. Not many remember that in 1991, when this was the time when Kasparov and Karpov were the two big names, Ivanchuk won the 1991 Linares tournament. Now, Linares at that time was one of the top tournaments on the circuit. And he won the tournament ahead of Gary Kasparov by half a point. He, on his day, can beat anyone. And yesterday he showed that he had it in him to beat Carlsen. Although a lot of people can argue that Carlsen could have won that game. Yes, he blundered. But if you see the first part of the game or the better part of the game, Ivanchuk was dominating. And the very fact that he could take a game off Magnus Carlsen, who's on a roll, he's playing some of his best chess now, best online chess. And to take a game off him and to take a point off him is something amazing. And that's what Ivanchuk accomplished. He couldn't land the finishing, he couldn't land the punch, the winning punch, the knockout punch, so to say. But he won the hearts of those who were watching. Other match of the day, which was, of course, that had a lot of blunders and something very unusual, occurrence. That was between Kramnik and Dingliren. Now, what happened was that twice in this match, which is very unusual, twice in this match, Kramnik blundered his rook. In the first game, he had it. It was very strange to say that somebody placing his rook in front of a pawn and just losing the game instantly. That's what Kramnik did. Probably that is what we call in chess as a chess blindness moment, or a completely, you just have a brain fade, so to say. And that's what exactly happened to Kramnik. But then he bounced back, and how? That is because Dingliren, in an equal position, lost internet connection. Now the rules say that you have to connect within the time that you have on your clock. He couldn't reconnect and he was declared lost. And thereafter, in game 4, of course, that time it was, the Chinese world number 3 who blundered, and Kramnik capitalized on that. So Kramnik won that match, very exciting, bounced back. So you had Carlsen, Peter Liko, and Kramnik winning their matches after losing the first games. In the other two, there was, of course, the all-Russian clash between the current Russia number 1, Nepomniachtchi versus, or rather Nepomniachtchi as he's called, Nepomniachtchi versus Peter Liko, who's an 8-time Russian champion. And after the first 2 games ended in draws, it was Nepomniachtchi all the way. He won the next 2 to win 3-1. And the last contest of the day, featuring Anish Giri and Boris Gelfand, 2 players who are positional players. That means that you won't see too much of action on the board because they're pretty solid. And as expected, there were 3 draws. And in the 4th, Anish got that little advantage, and he ensured that he converted it into a win. You have Nepomniachtchi joining Carlsen at the top, same number of points now. And Kramnik, thanks to his win over Ding, is now 3rd. And Swidler, despite losing, is 4th. And Anish Giri has now caught up because he has won the last 2 matches. So still 4 matches to go. That means 12 points at stake. A lot can happen. So we can't be too sure, but Carlsen and Nepomniachtchi seems to be consolidating their claims for a spot in the semifinals.